ragamuffin keep on rising to the top. Ragamuffin keeps striving in every way. International, what they call me international. When me ride palm rhythm and I move with the rhythm and I come down crucial. And me ride palm rhythm and then we sit down steady. Body me on the place I with the one Jamal skinny.
Yes. What is up, everybody? Let me know if you can hear me, if it's loud and clear. And while we're letting everybody filter in, why don't you let me know where you're coming from and what you're most excited about in today's stream. Because, of course, we're going to be talking with the talented Ben Schmitz and Daniel Fine from Aberrant DSP. They got a brand new plugin out. It's called Digitalis. It's absolutely phenomenal. And I'm excited to welcome them. So please join me in welcoming Daniel Fine and Ben Schmitz.
Hey.
Hello.
Oh yes. We got I just introduced this applause effect on the last stream we did, and I use it. I'm out of control with it. But nice. How you doing, guys?
Good. Yeah.
Not bad.
Yeah. Where are you coming from? You're not in the same location, right?
No, I'm up in Rochester, New York. And Dan's down the city.
Yeah, I'm in New York City.
How long of a drive is that separates the two of you?
Like a 5-hour drive.
Yeah, 5 to 6 hours.
I got rid of my car last year when I moved to New York because it was a pain to have it in the city. So for the Digitalis release, I flew to Rochester. Seemed a little bit silly flying within the same state, but
I mean, it's really fast though.
Nice. How long of a flight is that?
Like 40 minutes.
Oh, really? That's wild. So obviously we're here today to talk about the new plugin, Digitalis. Am I saying it right? I'm assuming I am.
Yeah, Digitalis, yeah. Like
cool.
The flower or the heart medication or whatever.
Oh, okay.
With all of our stuff, the pronunciations are always a little bit vague. You can call it like Aberrant, Digitalis.
Well, I like to. I mean, that's why we're talking to the creators. I want to know the correct way, so I can at parties, dinner parties, and whatnot. I can pull the trump card.
Oh yeah.
So is it Aberrant or tell me how it is?
Oh yeah. we say aberrant, but I mean, I think that's the right way, but who knows? I don't know.
This is the thing. We use them interchangeably too, so
Yeah.
there's no right way.
Okay.
We looked it up once and it said aberrant, but we had already been calling it aberrant, and my dad makes fun of me for pronouncing my own company's name wrong. So just is what it is.
Just because I make the YouTube videos, and I have had people come to me and tell me how wrong I am about pronouncing all sorts of things. So the more knowledge I have to be prepared to deal with YouTube comments, the better for me anyway. Yeah.
Then Moog, though, I got into a fight once with somebody over the
Ooh,
pronunciation.
Moog
of
and
that.
Moog.
Moog or Moog, yeah.
Chat, let us know. Is it Moog or Moog? Let me know. I don't even know how you could possibly write that out. Maybe Moog with like 4 O's, or Moog with just an OGE because English. Anyway,
You can do the cow emoji if it's Moog.
there you go. So why don't you guys just give us a quick introduction to yourselves, the company in general, and maybe how you work with each other and to make such great plugins.
All right. Yeah. So yeah, as Josh was saying, I'm Ben. I'm the lead DSP developer. DSP meaning digital signal processing. So all that really means is my job is to handle making our plugins sound the way they do. Doing all the effects, all the code for the effects and everything like that. I also do most of the customer support and like boring business administration stuff. Me and Dan both went to college together here in Rochester, and made first version of Sketch Cassette for our like college senior design project. Then started selling it for $20, and now here we are.
Yeah. I'm Dan. I do everything else pretty much for the company. So my main job is designing the way the plugins look, and doing all the coding for that. And Ben and I kind of work back and forth to design our products. It's largely a conversation. Like every day we're texting each other, just suggestions. I'll suggest things for him for the way the plugin should sound, and he'll suggest things for me of how it should look, and we kind of work on what our plugins are going to consist of control wise, and it's been fun.
Yeah, and we've actually done a podcast before on on the 2 first plugins that we've distributed on Plugin Boutique. So people who are interested in learning a bit more about those can definitely check that out. My friend Jim is manning the chat. He'll throw a link in there. But today we're going to be talking about Digitalis. Tell me about the concept process for this, maybe where the idea came from, and sort of what your hopes were, and where we are now, and how you actually, it's out there in the world now. It's people are doing whatever they want with it, and maybe your sort of first impressions on what people are doing with it compared to what you think or have thought they might do with it.
Yeah, I mean, it's, as you can probably tell just from looking at it, a lot of it's inspired kind of just by like early computing in general and like early digital audio. Obviously we've both always really liked degradation style effects. That's where Sketch Cassette came from. But we really wanted to just like really explore all the various ways that digital can sound all sorts of kind of bad, but in a fun way. And from the get-go, this was kind of a really big thing that we had in mind, like all these different sections in the sequencer, and actually ended up getting scaled down quite a bit over the course of development, because some of our original ideas were just way too much work. But yeah, I mean, really just inspired by early digital things like that, and with everything we do, we like taking concept like that, just like with Sketch Cassette. We had it's cassette degradation, but just let people take it a step further. Obviously, do things that sound for Sketch Cassette nothing like a cassette. For this, tons of stuff that sounds nothing like early digital audio, but still kind of inspired by that. Like you can still kind of feel that being the roots of it, no matter what you're doing with it.
I think the biggest thing that excited us about this project was how limitless it felt. Because with things like sketch cassette and analog emulations, you're kind of limited to replicating a certain sound. Whereas this, we kind of approached it with let's throw any idea we have because we're working in the digital realm to try to make stuff that sounds like it comes from the digital realm, so we can have a lot of room for experimentation, and that's where ideas like the paint section come from, where you're working with FFTs and all sorts of just weird digital manipulations.
Okay. Another quick question is, who is John, and what kind of involvement did he have on the project?
So John is my cat, really my girlfriend's cat, but we live together, so he's hanging around with me. The official third member of Aberrant DSP. He made his way into this plugin in a couple of ways. Mainly from, if you look at the UI, there's that little box on the bottom right that has all sorts of helpful tips and tricks. The idea was, we wanted to do something kind of like, Clippy from the old Microsoft Office stuff. Hopefully less annoying, but that was kind of a big thing throughout early computing. All these funny little tutorial features. And we just thought, John was a perfect candidate, represent him a little bit. I don't really know how he feels about being in the plugin, but
he's in the video too. He's you got to sign a release for all that.
Well, we figured he's the third member of Aberrant DSP. It's about time he starts doing something, to help out. So
getting all that premium Kitty Chow or whatever it is.
He's tried to learn how to code a few times, but hasn't had much success with that. So we figured he could be a good, helpful commentator in the plugin and just general cute factor in the video.
Yeah,
that makes sense. All right. Well, I think now is a good time to jump in and let people not only see this wonderful device, but hear it in action. So,
all right,
we're going to flip over right now to the screen share. People should be able to see it. And if you want to kind of just begin to let us know a little bit more about this plugin and let us hear it in action, I think that'd be a great next step.
All right, great. Yeah. So this is Digitalis. As you can see, the big things going on here are these three main windows: data, corruption, and time. And the sequencer down along the bottom. There's also a little kind of master section with mix and some filters. Here's John, like I was just talking about a second ago, with some tips and tricks. A few things I just want to touch on before I start digging in the effects is we have all sorts of various options to customize the look and feel to your heart's content. Various wallpapers. I like the sky one. There's a dark mode over here. There's a handy clock, which is for some reason stuck 40 years in the past. And adjustable UI size. So good things to keep in mind. Got our preset menu up here. If you've used any of our other plugins, works much the same. But yeah, I guess I'll start working through what we got going on in terms of effects. The data section is it's all the frequency domain processing. So things like you got your pitch shifter down here. You got this telecommunications section, which kind of simulates like bad MP3s and that type of like lossy digital audio. We, of course, have the PaintBox, which you can draw and erase or load up a preset pattern. What this does, I'll explain more in detail, but it's basically just this kind of scrolling filter that kind of changes how the audio is filtered based on the image. As this line scrolls across.
Oh, that's really interesting. Can you, it's going to be a question that comes. And by the way, if you have any questions for Aberrant DSP or Aberrant DSP, just tag @PluginBoutique and they'll feed me the questions and we'll ask on stream. But can you load in your own images?
You can't yet, but we're already working on that. We already have it pretty much working. It's going to be in the next update for sure. We just need to, test it a bunch more. Really make sure it's ironed out. But yeah, you'll be able to load in. You see these are they're not even like grayscale; they're black or white images. We have a custom way, so you load in really any JPEG or PNG. Again, this is coming in the next update, and it'll automatically kind of like apply a threshold and set half the pixels to black, half the pixels to white, depending on how bright they are.
Gotcha.
And then you have your own image going on, which is tons of fun. But yeah, so I guess I'll just start playing some audio. I'll get around to the other sections and everything kind of as we go. But we'll start here. I'll start without Digitalis and then turn it on. So that's off. And there's on. So this preset is called a little movement. All it's really doing is a subtle bit of the PaintBox and some stuff in the time section. So I'm going to let it play with the PaintBox a little bit so you can hear that. So I'll disable the time section for now, just to make it a little more clear what's going on here. So any of the pixels in this image that are white represent where frequencies are going to be canceled out, like completely filtered out. And any pixels that are black is where frequencies will be let through. So the y-axis in this image is frequency, going from 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz roughly. And the x-axis is time. And as this line scrolls across, different, columns of this image are being used for the filtering. So
it's like a multi-band filter.
Yeah.
How many bands are we talking about? Because that image, for me, looks super detailed.
There's about, since this is all done in the frequency domain, there are 256 bands. So this image is internally, no matter how big the display size is, it's 256 by 256. So 256 steps in time and 256 kind of frequency bins that can be turned on or off by it.
Do you think you could throw another image on there so we can hear maybe how it differs?
Yeah. Yeah, so here's another good one. Another thing here, you'll see this big slider. Called intensity. It's basically just an amount of the filtering. So instead of the white pixels being completely turned off, like they are when intensity is all the way up, as you turn down the intensity, instead of turning those frequencies off effectively, completely filtering them out, it just turns them down a certain amount. So
all right, this is blowing my mind already. First module in and I'm already dumbstruck. This is so cool, and it's so unique. I've never seen, to my knowledge or recollection at the moment, anything that resembles that. And I think in terms of what it's doing to the audio, using a picture to drive it, it's such a cool concept. And obviously the execution sounds wonderful.
So yeah, I'll switch to, there are a couple of other things here. I'll switch to another image.
Undermined Music is wondering if you can manipulate the time frequency, so how quickly it's scrolling across the 256 steps.
Yes, I'm going to show that right now. So right now, you see this rate.
Here we go. Yep.
That's how you adjust that, and it can get real slow, all the way up to real fast, or you hit sync, and it will sync to the tempo of your DAW. So say we want to do quarter notes. Especially when it's tempo synced, it kind of becomes something else entirely, Last thing, of course, it's a PaintBox. you can draw on it. So I'll select the eraser, get rid of some of these white pixels, just draw some squiggles. Reload that.
Yep. It's awesome.
Yeah, so that's that. I'll just clear that for now. Move on to a couple of other things in this section. So, of course,
Can I just
as you can see,
pause you there for 1 second?
yeah.
I have gotten right into this demonstration because of how excited I am, and I forgot to mention that we'll be giving away a couple copies of Digitalis throughout the stream. And I just wanted to let everybody know. Not only can you tag @Plugin Boutique with your questions, and the gentleman will have answers for you, but we'll also be selecting a few winners throughout the stream. And to win, all you need to do is be active in the chat and be a positive force there. So asking good questions, answering questions you have answers for, and just being a cool person in the chat. That's all you got to do to win. And we'll pick some winners at the at random at the end of the show. I just wanted to let everybody know that slipped my mind, but I think it's important to get it out there. Continue.
Cool. Yeah,
I apologize.
All right. Oh yeah. So I'll show the pitch section. So this pretty basic pitch shifter. And, since this is kind of an old school digital degradation plugin, the pitch shifter, not the highest fidelity pitch shifter out there. That's kind of because that's a bit beyond our, I don't really know how to make, Melodyne or whatever on my own. But also to kind of fit more in with the theme, kind of get some grainy artifacts and stuff in there. It'll work best on monophonic sounds, so you'll hear... with these big chords, there's some artifacts and stuff going on. But I don't know, we think that's cool. Definitely is a different vibe than a lot of pitch shifters, which is kind of what we were going for. There's also some formant shifting. Leave that there.
For the people who don't know, can you explain the difference between the two?
Yeah. So, pitch shifting, it's just shifting the pitch. So here I'm shifting the pitch an octave down, 12 semitones. And with formant shifting, it's not actually... So if I leave pitch shifting at 0... you can hear it changes the tonality of things without actually changing the pitch. I don't have a vocal sample on hand, but it's easiest to hear there. So, like, say you want to change the pitch of a vocal, you can, lower it by 3 or 4 semitones. That's going to sound a little weird. It's going to sound like it's a different person, singing that vocal part because, everything gets shifted down. But then if you shift the formants up to compensate for that, it will then again just sound like the same person, but just singing however many notes lower, which is cool. And on something like a synth, the analogy is a little less clear, but basically it's just shifting the tonality of things more than shifting the actual pitch. We also have mix for harmonization. And last, we have quantization. So basically just, a simple little kind of grainy auto tune. You can set it to whatever key you want. It can be really fun to, I think this is in D major. Just setting it to a completely unrelated key, get some fun results. and I've set it to pentatonic here to kind of showcase how pentatonic is kind of the most extreme quantization. But you have chromatic, major, and minor, and then obviously, whatever key and whatever variant of that key that you want. That's pretty much all for the data section. I'll get to the telecommunications with another example.
Before we move on, Daniel, as you're kind of the principal sort of graphic designer for these plugins, who came up with the idea of using pictures to make filter nodes active or inactive? And then how did you that's insane. How did that idea come about and how was it implemented? And just sort of walk me through that whole process.
Yeah, so we started with this plugin. We started with the data section. So the first thing we did a little over a year ago was Ben kind of set up the frequency domain processing. And from there, we were, excited about all of the possible things we could do once we were in the frequency domain. And so he started building the pitch shifter, and I came up with the idea for the PaintBox as a fun way to take advantage of what you can do once you've used an FFT to turn the signal into a frequency domain signal. And from there, it just kind of took off. I designed all of the patterns that you can load into the PaintBox, and that was one of the most fun things I got to do for this plugin was, just try out a random geometric pattern using Photoshop and boop it in and see how it sounded. And even things like, adding images. There's a whole bank of images you can load in and memes and, text and stuff you can try out. You even got the Mona Lisa in there just to hear how that sounds.
It was
pretty fun.
I know we want to keep moving, but you're flipping through the images right now, Ben. I would love to just hear some of those on that definitely. Kind of full synth sound you have, just to see what happens.
Yeah, I'll start with, there's all sorts of, there's too many to show, but
How many are there? Just curious.
I think it's like almost 190 something.
Oh, okay.
So I'll do a couple of the dots and then a couple of the images. I think those are some of the kind of really crazy fun ones. Switch to some images. Got a couple of John the Cat. Couple of memes.
Yeah, we're going to have to come back to this on some other sounds too, I think. This is just, it's mesmerizing to me what's happening right now.
It's been a favorite of one of our biggest pieces of feedback is everyone just like, oh my God.
It's just such a unique idea. And obviously it starts off happy accidents, things that sound interesting. They sound, unique, I think. And that's what this kind of plugin lends itself to, is having a unique sound, even with, like you're saying about the pitch shifting character. It's character. And that's why people still like to process through virtual tape machines, just because the character of that slur, the wow, the flutter, like it's cool. And each tape machine has its own thing. So I think it's the right call to say, hey, that's what we've done with our pitch shifter, for example.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, definitely. Yeah. That's always kind of the goal for us. So I guess,
I've got some more questions if you don't mind. From the community here. Fireball is saying, how long did it take you to build this idea, and how did it really come about?
Talking about just the paint section? Or
I think the plugin in general was where the question was coming from.
It took about, after we released Sketchset 2, which was in November of 2020, we took about a month off until like around New Year's. And we were kind of working on Digitalis ever since then. Obviously, just with a project this big, especially on my end, there were periods of, going really fast, getting a ton done, and then just being stuck for weeks on one stupid thing. It took a long time. It was like a bit over a year, like a year and a few months, which is by far the longest we've worked on any of our stuff. And probably not something we want to do again all that soon. I think up next. We're going to probably try some smaller little things.
Are you going to give us the exclusive inside track on what those smaller little things are, Ben?
It's up to you, Dan. I mean, we've talked about some stuff. Nothing definitive yet.
Yeah, we have lots of ideas. Nothing definitive yet. The main one we've been floating out there is doing a standalone paint plugin where with expanded features, kind of like adding more paint brushes and colors that do different effects, and more presets for what you can do with that. Just because we've gotten so much feedback so far on people loving that idea.
That's an idea. Yeah, I'd say a logical next step. Chat, let us know what you think about that idea. Let me know personally if you are as blown away as I am. David Kovac is saying, or asking rather, are you using Juice or your own platform or services to build from?
Yeah, we're using Juice. It's pretty much the standard. If you want to make things easier for yourself for small developers like us. Yeah, it seems like I know everyone I have connections with that's making and selling plugins, from kind of like small to medium. Some of the big ones have their own stuff going on, but especially a lot of the small and medium companies, yeah, pretty much Juice is the go-to.
Yeah, I think that's right on the money there. And we've got a couple of people asking, including Undermined Music, if you can walk us through the automation options inside the DAW.
Sure. Yeah, I can. I'll open them up. It might be a little. So there's a lot of parameters going on here. Yeah. So,
is that okay? So I've got a quick question before you close that.
Mm-hmm.
Is this just a Reaper feature? That's why it looks like that. Like that in Ableton Live, you would just move a parameter and you'd get the lane, or you could go in and add certain automatable parameters inside of like the master automation thing. But
yeah,
is this just the way Reaper handles it? So people don't
they're
get overwhelmed.
I think they're slightly. I'm sure there are shortcuts and stuff. I don't know. What I always do is just you open this window and it has a big list of every single parameter that can be sequenced. Automated. You see a lot. There's a ton of them for Digitalis. All these are for Digitalis. But a lot of them you can use any of them, but a lot of them, if you're just focused on automating the main effects, you can ignore. So, here it's kind of in order of, here's the data section stuff. You got, formant shift, pitch shift. I don't know if you can see that because the words are kind of small. But then we work down through the corruption section, time section. Every parameter's in here. And then there's the stuff for master section. From here onward, so like more than half of the list is all stuff for the sequencer, which is fun if you really want to get crazy, because you can, the sequencer is kind of like a form of automation in itself, which I'll demo a bit later on. But then you can be automating the sequencer parameters and just get these huge layers and layers of crazy stuff going on. But yeah, for most normal automation use, just kind of the first half of this list, however it shows up in your DAW,
I don't think it would be just a massive list like that and say Ableton Live. But I mean, what you're saying though is most parameters are automatable. If I've got a MIDI controller hooked up, I can tweak a knob and get my automation lines moving.
Yeah, pretty much everything other than the PaintBox itself, and like drawing on it, because like how would that really work? And like there's no automation for selecting the PaintBox pattern. or like selecting presets. But for, any of the knobs and stuff, things like the rate of the PaintBox, any of this stuff down here,
Right.
anything that's a knob or a drop down or whatever, pretty much can be automated.
And just one last question before you move on. Strange Loops is asking, they're curious if you were inspired by Goodhert's Lossy plugin, or if you have you heard it. I haven't heard of it.
Yeah, we've played with that. I think that's a really cool plugin. I think we were going we wanted to get some of the same sounds, in terms of like, lossy digital audio. But the way they do it is, from what I understand, like very accurate. Like I think they're actually doing something very close to actual MP3, encoding and all that in the plugin. Whereas like the closest thing in our plugin to that is the telecommunications section, which I guess this is a pretty good example to touch on it a bit. It's inspired by a lot of that stuff, bad MP3s and all that. But it's definitely a different approach. It's more abstract, and I think you can do different things with it. But I'll show some examples of like how you could get kind of a bad MP3 sound on this synth. So I just turned up the loss a bunch. You can hear that. It doesn't really sound like a bad MP3, but you can kind of hear what it's doing and see on this visualizer.
It sounds more like a bad Zoom call, like a really bad Zoom call, where the audio is trying to get through, but only bits of data actually make it.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, where it's like so what all this is really doing is, how the PaintBox, is taking, taking individual low frequency bins, turning them on or off. This is turning them off if they're too quiet. And the threshold that determines what too quiet is set by this loss control. So and there are a couple of other things going on here. So a big one is signal strength, which you'll see it changes the kind of the size of the bins. So one of my favorite ways to get like a real kind of bad MP3, bad Zoom call thing, set this to here. So 2 bars from the top. And you'll hear it's kind of even a little more blocky. You also notice that just because high frequencies tend to be lower energy than lower frequencies, it's also kind of low passing everything a lot. And that's where the priority control comes in. So if you boost this, it'll boost the high end and kind of level things back out if you want.
So maybe like priority, without the priority, you're getting a more natural degradation. With the priority, you're saying, you know what, that's great, but really I want to hear some of those higher frequencies.
Yeah, and you can get some weird stuff for like if you really crank priority, you'll hear like the high frequencies are basically untouched, but the low frequencies are still kind of chopping in and out.
That's super cool.
And then you can lower the signal strength even more if you want. Now, a big thing to be aware of with this is we have some compensation stuff built in, but all 3 of these parameters really interact with each other a lot. So big thing is when you change the signal strength, you're probably going to want to adjust both the loss and the priority at least a bit.
Good
so
to know.
I'll turn the priority off. And then last thing is there's a mix.
Okay, I'm sold. I'm sold on the plugin already.
Yeah.
It's so cool. It's just so unique, and I can imagine. I mean, I think a vocal on that would really kind of push it to where people could really understand like what's happening, because I mean we've all heard it on a bad internet connection. But Daniel, so did you have input on these colored squares in there? Is there a method to that madness, or is it just randomly generated, or is there something going on with each and every color? Or?
Yeah, we just wanted to find a good way to visualize what was going on with the telecommunications section. And just the first idea we had was having a little grid of squares that represented the frequency bins. So that's really all it is from the right to left, it goes from low to high frequency. And you can see, especially as you turn the signal strength down, you'll see the packets that are lost get bigger on the visualizer until it's like entire, sections of the grid being turned off.
I think it's so cool. It's just so cool. And like you all, this is the third plugin, and all of your plugins are very visually interesting, but I think that's just an extra, it's like icing on the cake, because the plugins are great, but they also look cool and are like, they function, like what the design is functions. What is it? Form follows function or whatever, but it helps deliver the message of what's happening visually, which it's just another layer, which I think is awesome.
Yeah, when we first got started, I mean, we're both musicians and we have a long history of using plugins. And my biggest thing is, I think it's really important to have a plugin that looks like at least interesting. It doesn't have to look like, I don't know, very clean or, technologically advanced. It just has to look stimulating creatively. And so that was kind of my whole thought process with designing plugins is I experiment a lot and try to get something that excites me and excites Ben, and that's usually a good sign if we're both into it.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got some more questions if you don't mind. And also, if you're just joining us, make sure to tag @PluginBoutique with your questions. And we're giving away a copy or a few copies of Digitalis throughout the stream today. Just be active and positive in the chat, whether that's asking questions or just being a friendly person. We're going to pick a few people at random and give away those at the end of the stream. We've got Fine with 4 E's is wondering if animated GIFs would be considered for graphical input. And I think that maybe for the standalone plugin that you're talking about might be the move.
Yeah, because with in terms of just like importing them, like that would be very easy. Like the Juice has really good support for GIFs already, I think. In terms of converting them into something that we can utilize well, probably would be a decent amount of work. But yeah, I mean, if we're doing the hope if we do end up doing a standalone PaintBox plugin is to, have the room to be able to do all sorts of crazy stuff like that. Because, with the PaintBox and Digitalis, there's so many more things we could do, but if we keep just adding on to it, it's just going to be that one section is just going to, I think, get more and more bloated and just like kind of detract from the rest of the plugin a bit.
Yeah, we had a long list of like possible features for the PaintBox, just because, I mean, possibilities are endless there. You can basically build your own Photoshop to manipulate sound. But we didn't really want that to be the focus of the plugin. We wanted it to be a section that sounded cool combined with other effects.
Right.
So we wanted to keep every section, especially the PaintBox, as simple and straightforward as possible, so you can kind of directly interact with it and hear how it sounds with the other effects.
Yeah, no, for sure for Digitalis, but I mean, as you're saying, you're thinking about the kind of standalone, and I mean, it sounds like from the questions I'm seeing here and just my own like personal wow factor, and as you've said yourself, you're getting a lot of feedback about it. I mean, that's just a logical next step, and to do all, I mean, to build a Photoshop for filtering is. I mean, that's great marketing right there. The Photoshop for automated filtering or something, that would be great. Miko Harjusari is saying, is this heavy on the CPU/GPU? And an added question. How is latency? Good question. Good question.
Yeah. So on CPU, it's funnily enough, if I pull it up, so here in Reaper, you can see the CPU percentage. We're at 0.3 to 0.4. I have a pretty powerful CPU on my computer, but just for reference, like compared to our other two plugins, I average about like 0.8 to 1.0% CPU.
With
for
everything
Sketch Cassette.
activated. Oh, with Sketch Cassette. Okay.
Yeah, with Sketch Cassette. With this, even with everything activated, I don't see it go above like 0.6, hardly ever. There's a lot we did that I think we just got a little bit better at coding to make Digitalis, despite all that's going on, it's pretty snappy. It's pretty CPU efficient. Latency, on the other hand, there is quite a bit of latency, and we're working on ways to allow you to avoid it with some sacrifices. So things like the PaintBox, this whole data section is the source of all the latency because since it's working in the frequency domain, we have to convert the audio that's coming in to the frequency domain, do all the stuff to it, for the PaintBox pitch shifter, all that, and then convert it back. And that always adds some amount of latency. How much depends on the resolution you want for your frequency domain processing. But so we could do lower latency, but the effects would probably start sounding quite a bit worse. But something we don't have in yet, but is also going to be part of the first update, is if you disable the data section, clicking on it right here, you'll be in zero latency mode because nothing else in the plugin requires any latency. With the data section on, it's about 92, 93 milliseconds of latency at all sample rates, which we realize is quite a bit. It's not ideal for performing into, but
Right.
From the beginning, we kind of were thinking like this. Digitalis is meant more as like a playback processor than like a live effect. But if you want to use it as a live effect, I mean, if you don't mind latency, after the upcoming update, you can either, keep the data section on if you don't mind latency, or turn it off, and then you'll have zero latency. You'll be able to use the time section, sequencer, corruption section with zero latency.
Is it taking advantage of the GPU? Is that something that's available in Juice? I'm not familiar with Juice at all.
That isn't really as far as I know, that's not a huge. Yeah, there's no real GPU usage. That's a pretty advanced thing for audio stuff. Like, it's something that I think is still kind of being explored. I don't know of that many mainstream processors that use GPU. I mean, something that could definitely be cool, but the thing with like GPU processing is it only is a real advantage to things, things like the graphics. But for us, like the graphics processing for this type of UI really isn't too intensive. You can also.
Are you sure you can't use it just to compute? It doesn't have to be a graphic.
Yeah.
I mean, you can mine Bitcoin.
Yeah.
With it. I don't.
Yeah, so you can use it to compute, but the advantage of a GPU comes on computing things that can be run in parallel. So, that's why they're used for graphics, because you're, doing all these calculations that can happen simultaneously. Whereas with audio, there's much more of, a need for an order in which things happen,
Right. Okay, that makes
even
sense.
something simple as signal flow, like you can't just do everything at once. But for something like, converting the audio to the frequency domain using a FFT, that can be done on the GPU, and it can be super fast, but it can also be done on, there are, part of the reason Digitalis is, despite everything it's doing, is pretty speedy. There's like these libraries, like we use a library from Intel called Intel Performance Primitives that have these insanely fast, FFT functions that run on the CPU. So I'm sure it could be even faster on a GPU, but the performance difference would probably be pretty negligible, and it still wouldn't help things like, in our case, it wouldn't like help the latency or anything like that.
I think, and this is a bigger conversation that we don't need to tackle here,
Yeah,
obviously.
yeah.
But I mean, even consumer level PCs and laptops now come with dedicated GPUs. So someone in the dev space, like you, Ben, need to figure out how to take advantage of. I mean, we just my housemate just bought a regular laptop for like under a grand, and it's got dedicated GPU with its own VRAM, and it's like, for if you were a music producer, even if you're just getting started and you have all of that processing power, and then you have to worry about CPU, it's a shame that we can't take more advantage of that. But I mean, like I said, that's kind of outside the realm of what we're talking about.
Yeah.
But I do appreciate you fielding, and actually you filled me in a lot about the process, and I appreciate you for that.
No, yeah, I think you'll definitely, hopefully, see more and more use over the next few years. It's just audio's it's a very specific type of programming, where like you can't get around the fact that some stuff needs to be done in order and all that. But yeah, hopefully someone figures something out, take better advantage of all that,
I've got a few more questions here, but I think it's cool if you just keep running through some of the other sections here. I know you got a lot lined up,
right.
and I do want to let everybody hear rather than just hear us talk about GPUs for some reason.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll move on to the next example, which is a guitar example. So I already ended up actually showing some stuff on this one that on the previous track that I meant to show here, but that's fine. I'll just kind of gloss over that. So I'll start with it off and just A/B it. So here's the guitars with no Digitalis. And I'll turn it on. So you can hear a lot going on in this example. A lot of it you'll probably recognize, the sound of this dot pattern in the PaintBox and the Telecommunications section, as well as some pitch shifting with the mix. So for now, I'll show. So one thing I forgot to mention, there's this little mix percent at the top of every window. If you just click and drag on that, it can adjust the mix of each window individually, which is kind of handy. So I'll do that now for the data section. That's 0%. That's 100%. So since I already went over all the data stuff, I'm just going to bypass this section for now so we can focus on some of the other things going on.
Hey, Ben?
Can
you slide that? Yeah, you already knew it. You already knew it.
My bad.
Also, Did you show that, because someone might have noticed that the data is not in the same position it was. Did you show that you can drag and drop the signal chain there?
Thanks for reminding me. Yeah, there's a lot going on here, so I might miss some things. But yeah, so these windows can all be rearranged, and it changes the signal flow, which is pretty cool.
It's left to right, right? I'm assuming.
Yeah, so the default order is data, corruption, then time, but you can drag them in whatever order you want. You just pick up the window, and then you'll see a line appear kind of between them, and then you'll know that will slot right in there. So yeah, that's how that works. It's mainly the big places where you notice that are with the corruption in the data window. Like I'll demo real quick what change zero of those sounds like.
Oh yeah, big difference.
Yeah. Reason being that, since data in this case is removing, so much information from the audio, so many frequencies, a lot of the harshness caused in the corruption section gets kind of taken out. But if you put it afterwards, the harshness is being added after all of that kind of smoothing out is being done.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So I'll move on to the corruption section now, because there's a bunch of stuff going on here. I'm going to start with just the Decimate. So I'm going to turn this bit crush. There's, again, a mix for the bit crush, mix for the Decimate, mix for the whole section. I'm going to turn the bit crush mix all the way down, just so we aren't hearing any of that, and focus on the Decimate. And I'll turn the mix all the way up for that. So I'll kind of reset this to default. So now nothing's happening. I'm going to move through the amount. So as you can see on the little oscilloscope here, the Decimate is just a sample and hold effect. So it takes a sample at a given time, and depending on how high your amount is, behind the scenes the amount is really just a number of samples that it will hold a given sample for, which adds all those cool kind of digital funny harmonics. Another aspect that's going on here is the smoothness. So I'll set this to kind of a harsh setting. Smoothness will just kind of mellow out the highest frequencies a little bit. So you're still getting a lot of that granular, crazy digital stuff, but without a lot of the kind of piercing and shrill stuff that can happen. Lastly, we have a crossover. So how this works, so this is done kind of like after the Decimate section. So it applies a low pass to the wet signal from the Decimate section, and then applies a high pass to the dry signal, and you can kind of set the transition point so you can have a little more control over, you know, what specific harmonics are coming through from the Decimate.
So it's like a multi-band selector there. One's dry and one is the wet signal, essentially. Yeah.
Yeah, and the idea being, so then you can, you know, retain some high-end detail and some clarity while still getting a, you know, a nice granular sound. And I like to combine this with the mix, so you'll hear that the low-pass wet signal is a little bit louder than the dry signal, just kind of by nature of how the Decimate works. But you can use the mix knob to kind of level out the relationship between the two however you want. Yeah.
That's cool.
So that's that. I'll move on to the bit crush a bit now. I'm going to, again, reset this all to default pretty much. So in the kind of default mode, so everything, you know, turn all the way down, this set to linear. It's just kind of bog standard bit crusher. There's also this mu mode, which means that bit crusher's operating in mu law mode. You don't need to know what that means. Go here. It retains a little more detail, even at like really, really high settings. So just a slightly different flavor. Again, we have a crossover for the bit crush. Works very similarly to the one for the Decimate section.
So does it work the other way as well? Can you flip it?
You can't flip it. We messed around with that a little bit, and it felt a little unnecessary, mainly just because it was the main thing we felt like we wanted out of both of these was a way to reduce the harshness, help it like retain some detail and some musicality, and letting the lows through, but still letting the highs be all crazy and mangled. It could be cool, but it felt a little less usable, but definitely something we could look into in the future. Last big thing here is, so I'll turn this up. It's this futility slider.
That's interesting. What's that doing?
Yeah, so what that's doing is, by default, when you you can really hear it at really high settings like that. By default, way bit crushers work is they break up. You have your whole dynamic range of all these different levels that a sample could be at. For if it's 16-bit audio, 2 to the 16 different levels it could be at. All Bit Crusher's doing is just like really brute force reducing the number of levels, which creates this, crazy distortion that we all know and love. What the futility is doing is, so when it's reducing it to that lesser number of levels that the audio can be at, it's just determining how the kind of rounding works, if that makes sense. So with futility all the way up, it's going to be rounding down much more often. Whereas with futility all the way down, it's going to be rounding up much more often, which makes things louder and is the more traditional bit crushing sound. But with it up, the sound really kind of, especially really high setting, starts to just give up because it's not loud enough to be rounded up, since most of the time it's rounding down instead. Yeah, I hope that makes sense. It's kind of a weird thing to explain.
I think with plugins like this, it's great to get the actual explanation, but if someone is confused by what you've just said, the best thing to do is just get in and throw it on everything until you get a picture for yourself about what it does. And what's really happening is not your concern, as long as you're making the noise or the sound that you want. So
exactly. Yeah.
That was one of our biggest things with designing this plugin. Was there's a lot of technical things going on, the name of the Bit Crusher types that Ben is referring to is mid-tread and mid-riser, and we could have called the futility control something along those lines, but we wanted to be more musical, wanted to name it what it sounds like, and it sounds like it's making the audio more, I don't know, futile. So that was kind of part of our naming for that. And the whole point is you should just turn knobs and see how it sounds.
Gotcha.
Yeah. It definitely. Yeah, and I liked futility because with a lot of our plugins, like with the dropouts on Sketch Cassette and stuff, feels like a lot of what we're doing is just trying to make it as difficult as possible for the audio to escape unscathed.
That's brilliant.
So the futility kind of it gets even harder for it to not just be completely ruined the more the futility is turned up.
See, there you go. That's a more entry level explanation. I think you've just completely nailed it for anyone who had confusion.
Yeah.
I got a few more questions if you don't mind. Let's just keep knocking these out. Phil, this is Phil from the Plugin Boutique team, I believe, is wondering if you can add any noise types to the signal. Besides, obviously, what we're doing with bit reduction, and
you can't. We don't have a noise section really per se. The closest we have is this bit rot section, which I can demo in a little bit. The bit rot's kind of weird. It's kind of like a dynamic noise section, but also kind of a slight distortion. It's a little hard to explain, but you'll see it better when I demo it. But yeah, there's no like, it's not like Sketchy said we had like the hiss knob with cassette hiss. We don't have anything, no digital equivalent of that in here. But yeah.
Well, there you go, Phil. If you want noise, just go ahead and grab Sketch Cassette, and then you'll have it. That's easy enough. Just a personal question, I guess. What types of music do you two like to make in your spare time? Maybe you first, Daniel?
Yeah, I make sort of ambient-ish music. I'm really inspired by a lot of stuff coming out of like modern classical and post-rock and electronic. So I have like a few albums on Bandcamp in that vein. But I have a lot of fun playing with Ben. We like, if you've watched the introducing video for both this one and for Sketch Cassette, you'll see we just kind of jam to like indie rock meets electronic meets distorted stuff. Yeah.
That Digitalis intro video was actually really cool. And when, spoiler alert, at the end when you brought all of the different elements together into like an actual piece, like composition, I was kind of blown away. I didn't expect that at the end. It was just kind of a nice little, there it is. I think that was really cool. And the video in a whole is really well done, and in the vein of, things like bit rot and futility. Like, it was just a great video. What about you, Ben?
In terms of making music, I haven't made anything in quite a while. Mostly just because making plugins all day for my job makes me less inclined to want, like, when I get off work, just like stare at plugins a bunch more for recording stuff or whatever. But when I occasionally do, it's just like kind of a lot of acoustic-y kind of indie rock type stuff, I guess you could say. Yeah, like I play acoustic and electric guitar, probably acoustic more often, and I play drums. Yeah, when I do occasionally make stuff, it's kind of in a folk sort of rock direction, I guess.
He's got a Bandcamp, and there's a link to it on the website. His stuff is actually pretty great.
Oh, so he's underselling it. I see what he's doing here.
Yeah, he's underselling it.
Bandcamp.
Our senior year, around the time we were making Sketch Cassette, we formed a mini band to perform Ben's songs around Rochester. We played in venues like the Bug Jar. If any Rochester locals are in the chat, yeah, we had a lot of fun doing that.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how to pronounce the name, but someone's wondering if you've considered making instruments at any point.
Like software synths, I presume.
Yep. Or I mean, if there's something else going on.
Yeah, it's we've talked about it. It's something, at least on my end. Like I feel like I know a lot less about that world, like about what makes a good synthesizer, just because I don't use them that much myself. Like I have this synthesizer right here. I don't know if anyone can see it, but like, I have fun with it and stuff, but it's just not like, I don't know, like we got into effects, part of the reason I felt kind of confident getting into effects is my favorite part of mixing was always just, screwing around with stuff and, having these chains of 10 plugins, doing crazy stuff. And just having fun doing that. But like with a synth, like I still like, I look at stuff and I'm like, I don't even know where to begin with half of this, So yeah, I don't know. It definitely something we wouldn't be opposed to. I just want to have a really, I don't know, I'd personally want to have a really solid idea of something new we could bring to the table before, we would kind of want to step into that just because it's such a different thing.
Yeah, I want to make a soft synth, so I'll convince Ben.
There you go.
Right? That can be your job.
Yeah.
No, I've had all sorts of, every time I'm like, because so many evenings I spend just tinkering with like a loop and a synth pad and just making kind of minimalistic ambient stuff just to as my form of relaxing. So I always come up with like little ideas, like what my ambient synth VST would be like.
There you go.
So one of these years.
Someone's wondering what's up with the 1982. Why 1982?
That's just an aesthetic thing. So as you can see, like the date, 19th of April, 1:09 p.m. That's my local time. That's all just fetched right from your computer. That's accurate. 1982. It's just we were going for kind of the old school Mac aesthetic. We thought it was fun because presumably you know what year it is. And even if you don't really need to know while using Digitalis. So it's always it's not always 1982. It's 1980, whatever the last digit of the year is. So it's 1982 because it's
I see
2022. But it will be in 2029. It will be 1989, and then it will roll back over to 1980.
Yeah, I found when I was designing the interface, I found a website. Can't remember exactly what it was called, but it allowed you to view screenshots of all like hundreds and hundreds of versions of old OSs going back to like the very first ones. And that was really fun. I made all sorts of like mood board collages, pulling screenshots from those. And a lot of what inspired the interface for this plugin was mid 80s Mac. So like 1984, the Mac OSs at that time had this like very minimalistic white and black look with the taskbar up top that had the date in the corner, and we wanted to add little touches like that to kind of build the world around it.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So on my computer, it would say April 19th. What time is it? 6:11.
Yeah.
Cool. That was from William Hall. Thanks, William, for the question. If you got any other questions, at Plugin Boutique, and we'll get them answered on the stream here. Blaze FM is wondering what the bars on the left of the paint module do. I don't think we went over that.
Oh, yeah. I can show you that real quick. So that's just so when you're either painting, so you select this to paint, which means coloring in with white. I'll turn up the intensity so you can see it better. Actually, I'll just clear it. If you press clear, makes it all black. Press fill, makes it all white. It's just the brush size. So, if I bring it over here, you can see that's a thicker line. Over here, thinner line. And then same goes with the eraser. See, I'm just barely kind of scratching it there, but then when I get that.
Cool.
Yeah, and if you've made a mess like I have, you just do clear and it's gone.
And then James Coe is asking if you have any favorite presets inside of Digitalis. I see you using Spectral Snow often, I believe. That must be one of them.
We use that for the demo video. I like that one quite a bit. Dan, do you have any favorites? I can demo one.
Can you pull the synth pad up and go through some of the sound design presets? I made all of those.
Yeah.
And I just had a lot of fun trying to transform whatever sound you put into it as completely and totally as possible. So there's one called Nature Sounds that I really like.
I'll just scroll through some of these. Pardon if there's some volume jumps, I'll try and tackle them.
So wait, why don't you let us hear the dry signal first so we can...
Oh, yeah.
Okay, we're still working with that one. Gotcha.
Yeah, so as
that's
you can
wild.
See, some of them are just pure. Here's the Nature Sounds.
I don't want to be in that forest.
Yeah. Yeah, and then I'll show a couple of my favorites are the error ones, which can get loud. So I'm just going to turn things down a little bit. I'll just scroll through them. We went kind of cosmic horror with the error presets a little bit. We got critical error. These are just kind of for fun because they're so messed up.
Oh, that's got to be the time module there.
Yeah. So that's that.
I mean, Cosmic Horror, I think, details it. It might even be better to rename it that, because it definitely has those type of vibes going on. Like you're on a spaceship and something bad's about to happen.
Yeah, we want to scare the user a little bit. Keep people on their feet.
Well, I saw John glitching out there. Daniel, is that you that animated that?
Those are some touches I added in like the last few weeks before we released the plugin. I kind of just wanted to have a little bit of fun. Whenever you got really crazy with the plugin, John would let you know that you're getting dangerously close to breaking stuff.
Yeah, and a little hint. I don't know if he'll do it again. See that little rainbowy glitch he does.
Yeah.
I'll give you a hint. If you want to see that, mess around with stuff in the corruption section, and you're going to need to crank some stuff.
Challenge accepted.
Kind of a little Easter egg. All right.
Just a couple more to get through before we continue here. Rahim is wondering if this can be sidechained.
No.
Okay.
There's not really. I don't really know what he means.
I don't either. I mean, you can obviously sidechain the signal that comes out of it to something, but I think he means like trigger something to a beat or something like that.
Yeah, not yet. There's no like detector or anything to really do that. The only real like dynamic thing is there's a dynamic bit crushing mode, which I haven't gotten to yet. I'm going to showcase in a second on a drum track. But that, I mean, we could add a sign chain to that, but I mean, sometimes with like when we're doing some of this crazy stuff, side chaining gets a little nuts. We get that question always Shapeshifter to our compressor plugin, and just because of how weirdly that works, like this, like adding a sidechain to it, it's like super unintuitive to use. It's just very strange. But yeah, I mean, we could some ways to trigger different things depending on different tracks could definitely be a cool thing. Maybe in a future version.
LA Winter has a good question: is can you snap your drawing to a timed grid in the paint section?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I showed that a little bit earlier. Like if I...
Do you want to show the grid lines that you can pull up?
Yeah.
That might be a good
So
call.
you can't snap to a grid, but you can view a grid that divides the PaintBox into whatever division you want, and that will help you with timing your drawing to...
Yeah, so here's the so I have the PaintBox synced to the tempo in case you missed that, which definitely helps in terms of keeping things on track. But then if you go over here into the PaintBox thing in the options, you can click Show Grid, and it's a little hard to see on this pattern. If I lower the intensity, I'll just pick another pattern. Yeah, see these kind of faint lines. And you can change. They might be a little hard to see on the stream, but they're kind of clear on my end. This is just kind of it doesn't change the sound at all, but it's just a guide for if you want to draw your own pattern or whatever, getting clean divisions of a beat or whatever. And we have quarters, dividing into quarters, eighths, thirds, and sixths, so you can get kind of like a triplet type pattern. Or whatever, and I think combining that with any of these tempos, you can get quite a lot of stuff.
Yeah, for the standalone version, that's definitely coming, as you said. Maybe snapping to the grid is a feature for that one.
Sure.
Definitely cool.
And then last question, we're almost through this round of questions. Sci-Fi is said, is there a bias function in the plugin?
I don't know exactly what you mean, but no.
I don't either, and I was hoping that it was just my. I don't know exactly.
Yeah.
So if you want to Sci-Fi, if you're still around and you want to know, maybe you can elaborate a bit more on what you're after, and we'll try to get that question answered. But Ben, go ahead and take it away. If you got any questions, chat, hit at Plugin Boutique and ask. We'll get them answered on stream, and obviously just be active in the chat for your chance to win a copy of Digitalis that we'll announce at the end.
All right. So last thing I'm going to show real quick in the corruption section before I move on to the drums.
Can we slide it? Just slide it over a little bit.
Oh, yep.
That's it.
Sorry.
No, you don't have to go that far. I just like a little. Yeah. All right.
Yeah, keep wiggling it. So here's our guitar again, and just turn up the bit rot. And you hear how it's this kind of dynamic noise that it sounds kind of like a hiss, but it pulses kind of along with the music. There's a width control for that as well.
So is that like it's got like an envelope follower built in or something? What's it reacting to essentially? I guess the question would be.
It's just it doesn't have a follower built in. It's just the way it works is it has a more of a pronounced effect the louder something is, like just on an individual sample by sample level. So like, if an individual sample is louder, all it's really doing is turning things down in this weird kind of digital. We do all the. It's complicated to get into, but like we convert to the audio to a different type of number inside Digitalis for the bit rot, and then just like take individual bits out of it and like flip them and stuff. And just the way that works, it reacts more to louder sounds. Yeah. So then we have, it's a little subtle on this example, but there's a width control that makes the it react a little more independently on either side. And then there's a tone control. Which you can see kind of just subtly adjusts the fizziness of the noise all the way up. It's really... The noise itself is a little dialed back there. I can lower the amount a bit too. And lastly, we have plain old digital dropouts, which is pretty simple. It's just, they work very similarly to the sketch cassette dropouts, but they're much harsher and like really just kind of cut the audio out very suddenly. And there's a mono and a stereo mode. I'll show mono mode first. Now stereo. Yeah, pretty awful, pretty upsetting, but
it's doing exactly what it's meant to do. It's perfect.
Yeah, like this stuff, it's pretty weird, but I mean, there's certain stuff that like I love these things on. It's just this is one of the more, I think, sound specific parts of the plugin. Something like the dropouts, having it come in can be really cool, but for a whole sound, it's a bit much. Just because I don't know, I find this one pretty disturbing just because of it like it sounds like when you're DAW isn't working right or whatever, and it's it doesn't just, it sounds like an actual something is going wrong, but that's the way it's supposed to sound. So
I think this was a section I had to convince Ben to include in the plugin, because
yeah,
something that I was a big champion of. The idea came about, if I can talk about it a little bit. My friend a couple years ago sent me this album by an artist called Panchico. And it was an album that was made in like late 90s, early 2000s, and was released around then to little acclaim. I think it got very little attention. And somebody in recent years found a CD of it in like a bottom of a bin at a record store, and thought it looked cool and checked it out. And all the songs, the person who found it liked all the songs, but they were covered in all this disc rot, this same fizzy degradation sound. And they put it online, and it started getting a lot of attention. And
As like a feature, not a bug, yeah?
What was that?
As like a feature, like the people were mesmerized by the audio droplets in combination.
That was part of the thing that drew me to it, was this like fizziness, this digital. It like sounded like it was from another planet. And so after the album started getting a lot of attention online, the artist kind of came out and put a restored version of it on Spotify and all that. But you can go back and listen to the rot versions, and it's kind of fun. So yeah, I heard that. I was like, Ben, we gotta put this in the plugin. Like, we gotta
nice
make this an effect.
Yeah, and then I was working on that, I think, in like December, after having spent like 6 months getting the PaintBox and the pitch shifter and everything working, just being like, I hate this. It doesn't sound good. But that's the point. And I've obviously come around on it. It can be really cool in certain situations. All right. Oh, but yeah, I guess before I forget, last thing I should mention. So I'm going to turn Bit Crush up a bit. Say you want that distorted, but you don't want all that like high-end kind of hiss. There's a low pass for the whole corruption section. And you can set it at either a steeper negative 12 dB per octave slope or a negative 6. Just something, the important thing to remember.
Nice.
Yeah.
I think so. I mean, we still have a few things to cover here. We've got the time module and the sequencer.
Yep. Yeah, I'll try and pick up the pace a little bit. Yeah, I'll move on to the drums now. So I'll play these dry first. I'll turn to Digitalis. So I'll just turn the day section off because we're not really focusing on that at all right now. But I want to go over a couple more things in the corruption section. So we're using a bit of the Decimate on here. I won't go over that again. But big thing I want to touch on is this dynamic bit crushing section. So you see this meter jumping up and down. That's a detector, just like you'd have on any other dynamic effect, like a compressor. And then you have some other familiar controls. So you have a threshold, a ratio, attack and release. They all work basically in the same way. The main difference really just being that instead of the volume being reduced when the sound goes above the threshold, the bit crushing amount is being increased. So it works really well, we find, for like percussive things like this, where you want to still have some clarity but have like a really crunchy drum. So like when it hits, it just kind of gets really crunchy and splattery and nasty. So I'll play with these settings a bit and let you hear how it sounds. So that's obviously pretty extreme. What's happening here is the peaks are going above the threshold. We're boosting the bit crushing amount a lot, and since the futility is up so high, it's silencing out the peaks as they get louder and louder, which is kind of a fun effect. I'll make this a little less crazy. So obviously that's pretty destroyed, but a fun way to use something like this is to just mix it in a little bit with the bit crush mix control. So yeah, you can kind of fine tune to your heart's content. I'll also show how this sounds without the futility so high. So you hear the peaks there being really crushed and sound really kind of cool and digital, but without just the whole sound having that, that kind of whooshy hiss that bit crush effects tend to have. And again, you can mix this in just a little bit too. Or play with the crossover. Then you have, those really distorted kind of lows, but the cymbals and stuff aren't being crushed as much. So yeah. Are any questions popping up on that stuff?
Not on that stuff. Someone, Alan Dussel is wondering if there's any randomization features.
Not in terms of, so there's a couple in the time section, which is the next thing I'll be looking into. But I presume he means like something like a lot of plugins have a random button.
Yeah, like randomize everything and just get a...
Yeah, randomize all the controls. We don't have that for this, mainly because with this plugin with how many controls there are, like we felt like it would more often than not just result in a really kind of bad, weird sound.
Yeah, this isn't really the type of plugin that I would say.
Yeah, like it could get you some, cool, like really fun and interesting stuff, but I think a lot of it you'd still need to go back and just tweak a bunch of stuff anyways. So we didn't feel like it was the best fit, but it's always something that we're considering for like kind of every plugin we've made. We've kind of thought about that, but that doesn't make that much sense for a compressor like Shapeshifter. For Sketch Cassette, kind of a similar story to this. It felt like kind of a more deliberate type of plugin where you're kind of looking for some sort of specific sound, whereas like both the Sketch Cassette and with this, there's going to be a lot of sounds that people just aren't going to like for a lot of stuff, and with randomization, it would be a little hard to control, just make sure people weren't just getting, a whole bunch of like really just weird, bad sounding stuff.
Gotcha. V Sound is wondering if there's a way to save your painting, or after you've edited something, is there a way to save that state?
That is also, so the state of the painting saves with if you save a preset, a user preset, or you save your project. Obviously, that will all save. The painting itself can't be saved individually yet, but it is coming. That's one of those things that we also already have pretty much working. We just need to test it more, and that's going to be in the first update as well.
Right. Yep. So someone's asking about updates for the plugin, and that's just going to be one of them, being able to save a state. But if you're looking to save the state now, you just have to save the whole preset and you'll have it saved, whatever editing or import you do.
Yeah, if you want to like save a custom pattern that you drew. But in the future, like if you save it to a preset now, then you'll be able to load up that preset in the future and then, save the PaintBox by itself as a pattern to use.
Cool. Let's keep rocking.
All right. So now I'm going to move over to the sequencer down here. So right now I'm going to just show you how this works. I'm going to kind of set this up all over again. I can reset to default here. So you have you have 4 sequencers. They're all identical and they're all separate. They are like every control, like the rhythm, the tempo, whether it's synced or not, the settings for the steps and all that is independent for each of the 4. So you can completely independently sequence up to 4 things at the same time. And this is the list of what's available for the sequencer. So the mix on every single window, the pitch shift, formant shift, some controls in telecommunications, the 2 main decimate controls, the 2 main bit crush controls, some bit rot and digital dropouts controls, and then a lot of stuff for the time section. So that's what I'm going to showcase this on now, just to kind of walk you through the basics of how it works, because I think this will be a good... the time sections, I think, will probably be one of the more popular places that people will be using this. So I'm just going to put repeat on in the sequencer. So that will just sequence the repeater start-stop button. Now, an important thing to note, as John is mentioning, as I'm moused over the time section, the repeater, even if the tempo is synced, isn't guaranteed to be actually like locked to the grid of your DAW. There's some that's mainly kind of just due to limitations. Like there's not really a good way for us to guarantee that it's always locked exactly to the grid. It can be locked to the tempo, but if you want to lock it to the grid, all you need to do is automate the repeater on aligned to the grid when you want to turn it on, or sequence it, because the sequencer will always be locked to the grid. So just an important thing to note. So here in the time section, we got the rhythm. I have this set up for 8th notes. This can go from whole notes, regular dotted or triplets, all the way up to 4096 notes, which aren't even really notes anymore. Some of the wilder sounds you heard in the presets are using some of that. We wanted to throw that in there just kind of as a fun thing. It's kind of a why not type of thing. Really not meant to be, repeater sounds, like beat repeat type stuff, but cool, weird glitches nonetheless.
It starts turning into like a distortion at that level.
Yeah, and almost like the weird oscillator.
Well, we have to hear it. Let's. I mean, now that we've talked about it, I want to hear it.
Oh yeah,
I've never seen it go that low before. That's intense.
Yeah. So right now it's sequenced, and I'm gonna turn it on this 7th beat by turning this knob up. I'll turn on more of these so we can hear it for more. And I'll slowly increase the rhythm. It's already getting weird. That's 14096 notes.
Such a unique sound.
Yeah. And another reason we kind of include them is because kind of how you can hear, like, it kind of sounds neat to switch between them rhythmically. Like, it sounds like kind of a weird glitch. Like it expands it beyond just being, a beat repeating effect, and kind of lets you lean more into the like real glitchy stuff if you want to. in kind of a rhythmic way. So yeah, I'm going to touch upon a few more of these things. So again, with the sequencer, I hope you're seeing how I'm just adjusting these knobs down here. If I sequence something else, I'm not going to demo how it sounds, but you'll see when you click on the knob, it has a little pop-up that corresponds to whatever you have sequenced, which is kind of handy. So for pitch shift, the range is the same as the pitch shift control. You also see, I'll enable this window so you can see, when something is in the sequencer, the effect is grayed out, and you can't use it manually just so they don't interfere with each other. But when you turn it off, whatever your setting was here will be retained. And then just a couple more things in the sequencer. This little arrow down here is how you change the sequencer length. So you can go from 16 steps all the way down to 1. I don't really know the point of having a 1-step sequencer, but why not? And here's how you change the rhythm of the sequencer itself. Again, you can tempo sync or set a custom tempo. And then there's this control over here, which is smoothness. I'll demo. I had this set to 2%. This is pretty important on some effects. I think that the repeater on off is one of them. So I'll just play it. So it's kind of hard to hear on these drum sounds, unfortunately, but there can be a little tiny click when the step transitions for certain effects, the repeater on being one of them. And the smoothness is just a way to reduce that. If you turn it all the way up, really all it's doing is doing a little tiny fade out and fade in right, around the transition between steps. If you turn it all the way up, it's like a full-on tremolo effect. Which, don't know why you'd want that very often, but it's there. But even just on say 2%, it pretty much completely eliminates the clicks, and you can't even really hear any difference. Yeah, that's mainly just a declicking thing, but we figured why not include a wider range on it just to have another thing to play with, because it can do some cool stuff.
It's like a sidechain effect almost.
Yeah. Yeah, no, kind of a rhythmic tremolo. Why not, So, all right. So, yeah, with the time section, the tempo is synced right now. You can unsync it and set it to whatever you want. I'm just going to leave it synced. I just want to go over a few more controls. There's, again, a smoothness thing in the smoothness control in the time section. Works much the same way. Just does a little, because this will actually should be very easy to hear. Well, maybe not, because since it's a drum sound, it's between beats anyways. If this will be a little silly, but I'm just going to misalign it real quick. Oops, sorry, I'm moving this everywhere. So I don't know if you could hear that, but there's a little click at each repeat, just like a little pop, because the sound is suddenly changing a lot. The smoothness works much the same way as this smoothness. It just does a little fade out to remove those clicks or add a weird little tremolo thing. Next, there's this pitch bend section. So this can do either pitch bending or pitch shifting. Which can be a lot of fun. Right now, so these two are locked together. You see with this lock symbol. This is going to become pitch shifting mode. So octave down, octave up. So you'll hear there's the way this works, and this is kind of just a stylistic thing choice we made. The pitch bend doesn't apply to the first, I guess, repeat. The one that isn't really technically a repeat. Like it plays the dry sound, and then for a duration of 4 beats, it plays a dry sound and then repeats that same sound 3 times. The pitch shifting applies to the actual repeats. This was kind of due to a limitation because we couldn't. There wasn't a good way to shift up without having the first beat always be dry. But we also just thought it kind of sounded cool. It helped have some more rhythmic variations. And lastly, if you want to unlock these, you can do pitch bending. So that's down. And then we can do up. When they're unlocked, as you can see, they move independently. So you can set a start pitch. You can, bend from plus 7.1 to minus 7.1, or the opposite of that. So yeah, those are the main effects. Last big thing is all these glitch section controls. These are just ways of introducing chaos and kind of weirdness into the repeater patterns. So the first one is the rhythm glitches. These knobs up here. These have a depth and intensity. Oops, sorry. And these just make the rhythm faster kind of randomly. Yeah.
So all of those effects are only applied when the repeater is on, which right now is being triggered by the step sequencer at the bottom, correct?
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. So the repeater needs to be turned on and off because we figured it. We kind of designed it like it would be something that people would be turning on and off, at least at certain points. You can just leave it on, but if you're going to do that, you're going to at least need to automate it on at some point in your DAW if you want it to be, locked to the beat. But yeah, so those effects are only happening when the repeater is started, and actively repeating, which right now is being controlled by the sequencer.
All right. Well, is there more?
Yeah, few more things. We're almost done. So there's an M&S switch. S is stereo. So it does these rhythmic glitches separately in each channel.
That's so cool.
And then lastly, there's chaotic mode, there's this, it says rhythmic here. Click here, does chaotic. This is for true, just wild, glitchy stuff. It's pretty unmusical, and it makes these weird sounds, and it's clicky and weird, but it's here, so I'm just going to let you hear it. Yeah. So that's that. And then lastly, pretty much all this again, but there's a glitch section for the pitch of the pitch instead of the rhythm. This is controlling the pitch start. So if you have these unlocked, it will change, where the bending is starting from. Well, I'll just leave it locked for simplicity, just so you hear it. It also has a chaotic mode, which is a little more sane. So yeah, I mean that's pretty much it.
I thought you broke it, dude. I thought it stopped so abruptly. I was like,
we had a group of beta testers for this plugin, and one of them in their emails back to us commented that they loaded up a project and thought something was terribly wrong. But it turned out they had the rhythm glitch on chaotic mode turned all the way up.
Yeah.
That'll do it. Do it. Well,
yeah.
I mean, that was a very thorough run through, and we appreciate it. Everybody who's been watching. Lots of great questions from the chat today. Just an incredible plugin. I think you nailed it. It's super creative. I mean, there's so much baked inside the plugin that it's, whether you're using just one module by itself or combining them to make something, as you said, cosmic horror style. I mean, there's just so much. The possibilities are endless. And I think it's important to say that while we were doing this demo, we were really pushing the limits. I think most people will find just using it, kind of hints of it here and there to add a little bit of character, a little bit of spice to things might be the more appropriate way to go. But in that regard, if I were to use it, I would push it to 110 and then scale back until it just was, adding the little sprinkles on the top of such things, like especially the drums. I mean, getting gnarly, crunchy drums is just like a passion of most producers. So this is definitely a tool to do such a thing.
Yeah, one of my favorite uses of it when building a track is to play around with it like a toy on even like full buses or drum tracks or something, and get something really gnarly sounding, and then I'll bounce it out to an audio and just use like one bar of that as like a transition in between sections of a song, or just a fun effect to throw in at the end of a bar. Like it's kind of a good tool for doing things like that versus putting over an entire track for the full length of a song.
Yeah, no, 100%. Well, thank you, gentlemen. It's been a pleasure. I don't want to take up too much of your day. I know you're just getting started there. You're probably hungry. It's just afternoon, right, where you are? So what we're going to do is just give a few copies of this away to the people in the chat, and then I will let you go, be free, and start making that standalone instance of the Paint module. So what I have here are 10 names of lovely people who've been in the chat asking great questions and just being lovely human beings. And I want you, Daniel, to pick two numbers between 1 and 10, and you, Ben, to pick two numbers between 1 and 10, so we can be ultra random with who wins these. Okay. No pressure.
I'm picking 3 and 7.
3
I
and
like those numbers.
Okay, and what about you, Ben?
Dan literally stole both my numbers.
Oh no!
I'll do 2 and 9.
2 and 9. All right. So let me just get these winners here. Let me just put it over here. 2, 3. Too many screens. Too big of screens here. I gotta move my head so much. And then we got 7 and 9. All right. So we got 4 winners of this wonderful plugin by Aberrant DSP. Links are everywhere if you want to check it out on pluginboutique.com. Is it on promo right now? Introductory promo or something?
Yes. Yeah, it's normal price is $30. It's $20 until the end of April.
Oh, well, that's a steal. That's $20. You know what I mean? It's like the cost of a pizza. So skip out on pizza next weekend and just go buy this plugin. The winners, you don't have to buy the plugin because Aberrant DSP have been gracious enough to offer it to you for free just for participating in the stream. And that is Miko Marjusari, MIKKOHARJUSARI, Fine with 4 E's, Fog Various, and Sci-Fi, SCI-FY. The 4 of you get a copy of Digitalis for free for participating today. To claim your prize, just email support@pluginboutique, and the very important step is to take a screenshot of you signed in to your YouTube account with those screen names, and we will get you a copy of this. And of course, we're going to leave the list of the winners in the chat just in case you happen to leave before we announce them. But anyway, gentlemen, thank you very much for this. I feel like I know so much about this plugin that I can jump in and easily get started. I've got the roadmap. I've got the data section, the corruption section, the time section, the sequencer. I see John over there. John seems to be helping along the way. Is that where the tool tips are?
Yeah, so I forgot to mention that, but so if you mouse over stuff, John, does kind of general explanations about like what the different sections are doing.
Mm-hmm.
But if you touch an individual control, like while you're dragging it, he provides, not for every control because some are a little self-explanatory, but for weird stuff like loss and priority, he'll have an explanation that goes into depth on that specific control instead of just the broader section.
Great. And as we already mentioned, this is a great plugin to just get in and tweak everything until you find something that inspires you.
Yeah, the big thing is like, I know I've yammered on a lot today, but a big thing I always want for people with our plugins is like just we have like this one's 98 presets. Try a whole bunch of presets, just get a feel for it. Twist random knobs. Just don't be intimidated by it, because like at the end of the day, this is kind of a stupid plugin. Like it's very.
You heard it here first. Here first, folks.
What that is trying to say is it's a toy.
Yeah, no, really, like it's really weird, and it's like it can be hard to wrap your head around. But it's just we hope that it's just fun. We try to design it so it's like not. Oh, it's good for this type of sound on this instrument. No, it's have fun, mess around, find whatever you want, and that don't feel intimidated by it because half the time we don't know what we're doing with this thing either.
I think instead of stupid, we should just say it's fun. I think that's a better approach to it. It's not meant to be like big, super serious. Thing. Yeah. Just get in and find some happy sounds that happen to fit the project you're working on, and you'll be ahead in the game.
Yeah,
anyway,
work on something long enough, you're gonna think it's stupid.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks, gentlemen, for coming by. It's been an absolute pleasure. This is the second one. You are the first manufacturer we've had on 2 times. So
nice.
Yeah, that means something.
Yeah.
I'm doing them.
Yeah. Well, I had a blast. The chat had a blast, and we've learned a lot. So I think we've accomplished our goal. So with that, I will let you go and continue on with your day. And I'm going to go eat some dinner and go to bed early because I'm old.
Great. Sounds good.
All right, everybody. See you soon. And everybody watching, I'm Joshua Casper for Plugin Boutique, and I'll see you in the next live stream.
Keep striving in every way. International, what they call me international. When me ride palm with them in the move, but the rhythm and I come down crucial. And me ride palm with them and then we sit down steady. Body me on the place, I with the one Jamal skinny. we jump up on the rhythm, make we ride it right. We chat up on the mic and keep it international. Cause anytime we chop a mic, they call we give it a general. International, what they call we international. When me ride palm with them and I move with the rhythm and I come down crucial. And me ride palm with them and then we sit down steady. 40 men on the place, I wait they one chop my stick.